Hey guys, tonight we journey to the damp, fog-slick streets of 19th century Edinburgh, city of enlightenment by day, and something much murkier by night. The kind of place where shadows stretch just a bit too far and whispers carry across churchyards. But you won't be walking the Royal Mile this evening. No, tonight you've got dirt under your fingernails and a job no one wants to admit exists. Because you, dear listener, are a resurrectionist, a body snatcher, a professional in the fine art of midnight relocation, mostly of the recently deceased. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your day, or rather your night, starts with a cough, a wet, phlegmy reminder that you live in a tenement where mold is a co-tenant and privacy is a rumor. The window is cracked, not open, cracked. The frost clings to the inside of the pane like it's trying to get away from you. There's a distinct smell in the room, last week's stew, this week's socks, and the ever-present perfume of coal smoke and regret. You rise slowly, every joint protesting. You slept in your boots again, not because you're lazy, but because when your job involves running from angry townsfolk with torches, it's good to have a head start. The shovel leans against the doorframe like a silent accomplice. Next to it, a stained burlap sack. Inside is rope, a small crowbar, and a bottle of cheap whiskey with a label that's half peeled and entirely unnecessary. You don't drink for pleasure anymore. It's more like armor. Warm, awful tasting armor. Outside, the street is quiet, but not calm. There's always something lurking in the corners here. You pass the neighbor's door. Old Mrs. Ferguson. She knows. She doesn't say anything, but you can feel her disapproval radiating like chimney heat through the wall. She used to mutter blessings when you passed. Now she just crosses herself. You wonder briefly how long you've been doing this. Long enough that the smell of fresh turned soil doesn't bother you anymore. Long enough that you know which graveyards have looser dirt. Long enough that you can tell the difference between a recently buried merchant and a pauper just by the weight of the bag. And no, you don't sleep well. The city is darker than usual tonight, shrouded in a blanket of fog so thick you could spread it on toast. Your breath comes out in short white puffs, mingling with the mist like you're trying to disappear into it. You walk quickly, but not too quickly. Drawing attention is dangerous. Drawing attention while carrying a shovel is career-ending. Historians still argue whether most resurrectionists were desperate or simply greedy. You suspect it's both. What else could explain a man willingly spending his nights shoulder deep in cemetery loam? You cut through an alley where the cobblestones are slick with something that's definitely not just rain. The pub on the corner is still lit, warm laughter spilling out into the cold. You don't stop. You can't afford to stop. But part of you, maybe the part that still remembers your mother's face, lingers for a second too long at the window. You've got a partner tonight. Jemmy. Always Jemmy. He's waiting at the graveyard gate with a face like a weathered potato and hands that never seem to be clean. You nod at each other without speaking. Words are wasted out here. Besides, what's there to say? Hope tonight's body is still fresh? Not exactly a hallmark moment. The gate creaks open on a groan that could wake the dead, which is ironic, considering. Inside, the graveyard is exactly what you'd expect. Cold, silent, and packed with clients. The tombstones lean like old drunks, many of them cracked, worn, or just plain wrong. Names you can't read, dates that don't make sense, epitaphs that feel more like punchlines. You find your mark quickly. Jemmy has a knack for picking the recently deceased. Tonight, it's a tailor, mid 50s, no family, buried with little fanfare. Perfect. You drop to your knees and start to dig. The soil is damp, sticky. It clings to your fingers like it knows what you're doing and doesn't approve. You dig in silence, only the occasional grunt from Jemmy to mark time. After 20 minutes, your back is screaming, your breath is fogging, your vision, and the coffin is in sight. You pause, just for a moment. This is the part you always hate, the moment before the box opens, because there's always the chance that something's not quite right. The body could be decomposed, or moved, or something worse. You've seen your share of strange things. People buried with their eyes open, people buried clutching something in their hands like they knew you were coming. You pry open the coffin with a careful twist of the crowbar. The wood cracks, quietly. The air that escapes is foul, earthy, chemical, like spoiled meat left in a cellar. Inside lies the man, still dressed in his final suit. You try not to look at the face. Faces are the worst part. Hands you can ignore. Feet don't bother you. But faces have stories. You wrap the body in the sack, working quickly. The less time above ground, the better. Jemmy lifts the feet. You take the shoulders. Together you hoist the man out of his eternal rest like a couple of clumsy undertakers, working in reverse. Somewhere in the distance, a dog starts barking. You both freeze. One bark, two. Then silence. You exhale. Jemmy mutters a curse under his breath and tightens the rope. Time to move. You exit the graveyard the way you came. No one sees you. No one ever does, unless they want to. The sack is heavier than usual, or maybe your conscience is just wearing lead boots tonight. You drop the body off behind the anatomy theater. No questions, no thanks. Just a small purse of coins and a look that says, "Don't speak to me in daylight." You pocket the coins and turn back toward home. The sun is beginning to rise. Your shift is over, and in the pink-gray dawn light, your shadow looks longer than it should. You never quite get the smell out. It clings to you like a second skin, something between damp wool, decay, and the cold iron scent of turned earth. You scrub your hands raw in freezing water every morning, but your fingers still smell faintly of pine and something sweeter. Not the good kind of sweet, more like meat that forgot it had an expiration date. And your clothes? Forget it. You could dunk them in the North Sea and still catch whiffs of coffin mold every time you lift your arms. Tonight, you've got the same uniform. Tattered coat, scarf that's more whole than fabric, and gloves with the fingertips worn through. You'd think a resurrectionist would spring for better gloves. You'd also think a resurrectionist would make more money. You'd be wrong on both counts. The money's good, yes, but it doesn't last. Between bribes, whiskey, and rent for a room barely bigger than a grave plot, it leaks away faster than you can bury your guilt. And the work? It's not reliable. Sometimes weeks go by with nothing worth digging up. Other times, 3 bodies in a week and not a moment to breathe or sleep. Your boots squelch as you step onto the churchyard grass again. It rained earlier. Not heavy, just enough to turn the earth to soup and the air to soup steam. The fog hovers like a lazy ghost curling around headstones, clinging to your legs. You wonder if the fog knows what you're about to do. Probably. Everything else seems to. You kneel, shovel in hand, and start your work. You're careful not to damage the coffin. Surgeons pay extra for undisturbed bodies. They say it's easier to study a corpse that hasn't been jostled like a sack of potatoes. You try to respect that, even if the word respect feels ridiculous when your job involves unearthing strangers in the moonlight. The first few shovelfuls are easy: loose topsoil, bits of dead leaves, a stray bone here or there, not human, probably dog. Then the deeper soil hits, wet, dense, heavy as sin. Your back begins to complain almost immediately, but you've got a rhythm now. A gentle grunt on the lift, the soft thunk of earth hitting the growing pile, the slight squeak of your boots with every step. It's almost meditative, in the same way washing dishes or confessing sins might be. If you did either of those things regularly, the grave's occupant is a woman this time, young, died in childbirth you overheard at the tavern. No husband, no family to visit her grave, just the midwife who buried her and the priest who likely forgot her name by the time supper was served. And yet, when you open the coffin, your breath catches anyway. Not because she's beautiful, though she is in a pale, collapsed sort of way, but because for just a second, she looks like she could still wake up. Her hands are folded neatly. Her dress is clean. Someone took time with her, even if they're not around to see the aftermath. You hesitate. Not long, just enough. Jemmy's not with you tonight. He had a toothache, or a woman, or both. You didn't ask, so it's just you, the woman, and the wind that's picking up, curling around your ears like it wants to whisper something. You pull her free. She's light, far too light. You try not to think about that, about how much of her was lost in the labor that ended her life. The sack goes over her like a veil. You tie the rope in practiced loops. You've gotten fast. Too fast. That used to bother you. Now it's just efficiency. As you shoulder the bundle and turn toward the exit, something shifts behind you. A scrape. A soft crunch. You freeze. Grave robbing isn't exactly a social activity, but you're not the only one playing this game. And there are worse things in the night than angry priests and nosy watchmen. Other resurrectionists, for one, the desperate ones, the ones who don't mind using their shovel in ways it wasn't designed for. You spin, breath fogging the air, heart thudding like a kettle drum. Nothing. Just a headstone tilting like a drunk uncle and a crow that blinks at you too slowly. Still, you walk faster. Back alleys become your friends. The less you're seen, the better. Your route is practiced. 3 lefts, a narrow squeeze behind the tannery, a hop over the wall beside the old brewery. The smell back there makes you gag every time, and you think that's impressive. Considering what you're carrying, by the time you reach the university's back entrance, you're soaked through. Rain again. Of course. Scotland doesn't do weather, it does moods. And tonight, it's feeling particularly grim. The assistant meets you with a lantern and a coin purse. He doesn't look at your face. He never does. You appreciate that. Weirdly. You don't want to be remembered. You lower the sack gently. He opens it, does a quick inspection. He nods once, hands you the purse. He doesn't say thank you. You don't expect it. You glance past him. Just for a second. The dissection table waits in the gloom, bathed in flickering candlelight. You see other shapes on other tables. Limbs, mostly. Something that might have been a shoulder. A face, half covered. You turn and leave before your stomach catches up. Outside, you toss the empty sack into your satchel and start the long walk home. Your legs ache. Your arms shake from fatigue. Your conscience? That's been shaking for years. The money jingles in your pocket. It's enough for breakfast, maybe even enough for a bottle that doesn't taste like turpentine. And yet, your mind won't stop replaying the way the young woman's hands had been folded, like she'd been laid to rest gently, deliberately, like someone had loved her, like she mattered. Historians still argue whether the resurrectionists believed they were doing something useful, advancing medicine, helping the future. You want to believe that. You do. But sometimes, when the fog is thick and your boots are heavy, it doesn't feel like progress. It feels like theft. There's no such thing as a resurrectionist with a good night's sleep. Your hours are strange, twisted things, half lived in shadow, half in sleepless twilight. You don't rise with the sun because you rarely see it. Morning is when you collapse into whatever passes for a bed, still wearing the grime from the night before. And if you're lucky, you sleep dreamlessly. If you're not lucky, well, you dream of coffins that open themselves, of pale hands gripping your wrists, of eyes that never close, even 6 feet under. Tonight, as always, begins late. The city is quiet, in the way that means trouble is waiting, not resting. You wake up to the sound of your neighbor coughing through the wall, a long rattling wheeze that ends with a spit. Consumption, probably. Everyone has it, or something like it. You sit up. Your body protests. Your legs are stiff. Your back aches. And your stomach reminds you it's been a long time since something warm and edible crossed paths with your teeth. But there's no time for soup. The university has an order. 2 specimens. Unblemished, they said. You'd laugh at the phrasing if it didn't mean another sleepless night digging through mud and moral ambiguity. You know your options. There are 2 freshly filled plots up at Greyfriars. Not the best place. Too many passersby, even after dark. But the pay is better when the body's from a good part of town. And this one, it's a banker. Died of a stroke mid-meal. Probably had gravy on his shoes when they buried him. You grab your shovel, your sack, and the same bottle of whiskey that somehow hasn't emptied despite your best efforts. Your coat, still damp from last night, clings to you like a guilty conscience. You step outside. The moon is hidden tonight. That's good. The darker the better. You navigate the winding alleys with a familiarity that should worry you, past the fishmongers, where the stench never quite leaves, past the chapel with its crooked bell tower, past the place where Jemmy once tripped and landed face first in a midden pile, and where somehow the midden came out better. At the edge of the graveyard, you pause. Always pause. You listen. You look. You feel for anything off. It's not just paranoia, it's survival. You've learned to trust that weird tingling at the base of your skull. That sixth sense that whispers, not yet, not tonight, not here. But tonight it's quiet. No voices, no boots, no lanterns. Just you, the dead, and the sky. You scale the wall with care. The old stone is cold, slick, and not exactly eager to support your weight. You land with a muffled grunt, knees aching. The grave is easy to find. New dirt, no grass, just a mound of earth that still looks sore. You begin to dig. This part never changes. It's always the same rhythm. Shovel, heave, breathe. You lose yourself in it. The sound of earth parting, the wet slap as it hits the ground. Beside you, your breath coming in foggy bursts. The silence that settles between each motion, like the grave itself is listening. 10 minutes in, your arms burn. 20, and your shirt clings to your back like a second skin. 30, and you hit wood. The coffin is plain. Nothing fancy. Just enough to say middle class without shouting it. You clear the edges. careful not to damage the lid. Then the crowbar comes out. A quick twist, a groan of timber, and you stop. Something isn't right. The coffin is empty, not recently emptied, not disturbed, just empty. No corpse, no shroud, just a space where a person should be. You step back. The hair on your neck rises. You check the name on the stone. You check the date. You check the soil for signs that someone beat you to it. Nothing. Historians still argue whether some people were buried in empty coffins as part of a scam, insurance fraud, burial plot reselling, or just rich people being weird. You, however, do not have the luxury of academic debate. You are now standing waist deep in a hole, with an open coffin that contains exactly zero profit. You climb out slowly. Your hands shake. You're not scared. Not exactly. Just off balance. Like the world missed a step and now you're falling sideways. You back away, careful not to leave footprints. You smooth the dirt as best you can. You glance around. Still no one. And then, just as you reach the wall, you hear it. A voice. Soft, low, muffled by earth. Not words, just sound. Like a moan or a breath. You freeze. You listen. It doesn't come again. You leave. You do not run. Running makes noise. Running draws attention. Running suggests guilt. And you already carry enough of that. But your walk is brisk, purposeful, and your heart doesn't slow down until you're back on your own street, where the familiar smell of coal fires and last night's stew welcomes you like a musty blanket. You get home. You lock the door. You pour a drink and try not to think about what you didn't find. You tell yourself it was a mistake. Wrong grave. Clerical error. Maybe the body was removed for an autopsy. Maybe the man faked his death. Maybe you don't sleep again tonight. Because for the first time in a long while, you're not sure who's watching the graveyards after dark. And worse, you're not sure if they're still under them. You don't dig alone tonight. Not because you're scared, though let's be honest, last night still lingers in the back of your skull, like the taste of spoiled milk. But because the ground is soaked and your back is already muttering threats, you've brought in Callum. Callum is 6 foot nothing, built like a sack of masonry, and has the moral compass of a sea cucumber. He doesn't ask questions. Not the smart kind, anyway. Mostly, he grunts, eats pickled eggs with his bare hands, and smells faintly of boiled cabbage, regardless of the day of the week. But he can dig. Oh, can he dig? Together, you trudge through the sucking mud toward the cemetery at St. Cuthbert's. The rain hasn't stopped for 2 days now. The ground is half mud, half soup, and all regret. Each step tries to steal your boot, and you start to wonder if maybe this is what purgatory feels like. Eternally trying to cross a bog with a man who thinks jokes about feet are hilarious. Your target tonight is an apprentice clockmaker, young, wiry, buried quickly after a fever, probably still fresh enough to be useful. Surgeons love the young ones. They're easier to cut, less bloated, and occasionally still have their teeth. That last part matters. For some reason, students love practicing on jaws. You reach the grave. Callum drops his sack with a thud and starts digging, like the coffin owes him money. You keep watch. That's the deal. But it's not just about watching for lanterns or patrols. It's about listening. Because the worst part isn't getting caught. It's getting chased. And you haven't forgotten the last time someone saw you with a body on your back. It didn't end in a polite conversation. It ended with you hiding behind a butcher's shop, holding your breath as a meat cleaver swung so close to your head it nicked your hat. Callum grunts. He's found it. He's fast. Too fast, really. It's not normal to hit the coffin in 15 minutes unless the grave's been tampered with. You slide into the pit beside him, mud up to your ankles, and help clear the lid. The coffin is damp, already sinking at one corner. Cheap wood, the kind that breathes and warps and lets the earth in like an unwelcome guest. You pry it open, and for once, everything goes to plan. The boy's in there, face waxy, eyes thankfully closed. No rings, no coins, just a simple burial robe and a pair of shoes that probably cost more than yours. Still got his hair, Callum notes, chewing thoughtfully on nothing. You roll the body, wrap him tight, and get ready to lift. That's when you hear it. Clank, not from the grave, from behind you. You spin, heart already galloping. Your shovel's in your hand before you realize you even moved. A watchman. Close, too close. Lantern swinging, whistling. Not alarmed, not yet. You slap Callum's arm. He mutters a curse that rhymes with cluck. And together, you hoist the body like a sack of laundry and haul it towards the back wall. The mud is unforgiving. You slip. Twice. Callum nearly drops the goods in a puddle. You shove your shoulder against the cold stone and boost him up. Then you pass the sack over, hands slick with soil and panic. You're halfway up when the light catches you. Oi! Time stops. You vault anyway, land hard, and bolt. You don't think. You don't look back. You just run. Through alleys, over fences, across cobbles that bite at your knees with every uneven stone. Your lungs scream. Your heart hammers. Your boots slap the earth like they want to leave your feet behind. You duck into an abandoned stable, chest heaving, ears straining for pursuit. Nothing. Just the soft patter of rain and the faint smell of straw and rat. Callum slides in behind you 5 minutes later, pale as lard and twice as greasy. You sit in silence for a long time. Eventually, you both start laughing. That sharp, high kind of laughter. That's more survival than humor. The kind that leaves your throat sore. Think he saw my face, you ask? Callum shrugs. Not unless he's got a thing for mud golems. You both snort. Historians still argue whether Watchmen actually cared about resurrectionists or just pretended to until the bribe stopped. You've met both kinds, the blind and the brutal. Tonight's was the latter. You were lucky. The rest of the walk is done in silence. You drop the body off in a shed behind the university's east wing. Payment tomorrow. Always tomorrow. Always later. Back in your room, your coat peels off like a molted snake. Your skin is raw. Your hands shake as you light the lamp. You don't eat. You don't wash. You just sit on the edge of the bed, staring at the shovel. You wonder, not for the first time, what you would have been if you hadn't picked it up. A cooper, maybe. A clerk. Someone whose nights don't involve slipping through graveyards and praying the fog covers your sins. But then again, you're not dead yet. And in your line of work, that's really saying something. You'd be surprised how much a corpse is worth. Not sentimentally, of course. The mourners have already cried their tears, thrown their flowers, and walked away, thinking their loved one would remain peacefully 6 feet under. No, you're talking about real money. Tangible, dirty, jingle in your pocket currency. A healthy adult male, freshly buried, that could fetch you up to 10 pounds if you play it right. More if he has all his teeth and fewer signs of decomposition. Children fetch less, too delicate, not enough flesh, but they're easier to transport. Elderly bodies are a gamble. Surgeons hate brittle bones. The real prize, though, pregnant women. They pay double for those. You don't ask why. You just pocket the coins and try not to think about it too hard. Back at the tavern, Jimmy leans across the warped table, his face shiny with sweat and low morals. He's got a new list from the anatomy school. A wish list, he calls it. as if this were Christmas shopping for cadavers. They want one tall, one short, he mutters, eyes flicking to the door, and a woman, young, if possible. You take a swig from a mug that tastes like despair and vinegar. You'd think they were building a choir. Jemmy grins, just the opposite. You don't laugh. The joke's too close to truth. The University of Edinburgh has become a factory of learning and slicing. The demand for fresh bodies outpaces the deaths. Students need practice. Professors want prestige. Surgeons seek fame. And you're just the guy helping them keep the lecture hall stocked. The official story is that the corpses come from executed criminals or unclaimed paupers. The truth is, they come from you and men like Jimmy. Men with muddy boots, stained coats, and night jobs that don't show up on any census. You meet the doctor at the back of Surgeon's Hall. Not the doctor, just a doctor. He doesn't give you a name, and you don't offer one. You hand off the goods. An old woman from St. Mary's, still wearing a brooch shaped like a rose, and he doesn't even glance at her face. Just the bones, the limbs, the posture. A bit rigid, he mutters. You kept her cold? You stare at him for a moment. She was buried yesterday. The ground's still frozen. He nods absently and drops a handful of coins into your palm. More than usual. Must be a good class coming in this week. As you walk away, you hear him whistling. You hate when they whistle. Historians still debate how complicit the surgeons really were, whether they turned a blind eye or outright encouraged the trade. From where you stand, outside in the sleet, with a shovel in hand and blood on your collar, it's not much of a debate. They always knew. You try not to think about it, about what you're enabling, about what they're learning. Instead, you count the coins. You weigh the risks. You make the calculations you always make. This much silver means you can afford bread for a week, or a warm bed, or that coat you saw in the pawn shop with both sleeves still attached. But more than that, it means you don't have to go back to sweeping floors or hauling coal or begging for half a pint and a crust of bread. Grave robbing is filthy. It's illegal. It's disgusting, but it pays. The following evening, you and Jimmy scope out the South Cemetery, where the richer folk get buried with more ceremony and better shoes. You're after a merchant's wife this time. Just 40, no children. Pneumonia took her. Shame, Jemmy mutters, as you step over a wrought iron gate. Pretty thing by the look of her. You glare at him. Don't talk about them like that. He shrugs. Why not? They're not listening. The coffin is easy to find. Ornate stone, fresh flowers. These are the ones that cost families their savings. The ones buried with silk, jewelry, sometimes even a Bible. You don't care about the Bible, but the surgeons like a clean specimen. You dig faster this time. The dirt is looser, and the grave's not that deep. These wealthy types like showy headstones, but shallow holes. Maybe they think they're closer to heaven that way. When the lid cracks open, the scent isn't as bad as usual. You pause, not out of respect, but because she does, in fact, still look like someone. Pale lips, braided hair, hands folded so gently, you almost expect her to whisper, "Thank you." You avert your gaze and get to work. She's light, too light, like the illness hollowed her out before the ground could. You hate when they're this fragile, like porcelain. One wrong move and something breaks. You carry her out, careful, slow. Jemmy wraps the sack. You tie the knots. Then, from the shadows, a voice. Drop her! You freeze. A figure steps forward. Dark coat, club in hand, badge barely glinting in the moonlight. Watchman. You drop the body, hands up, slowly. Jemmy doesn't move. I said drop her. She's already down, you mutter. The man snarls. You're done, both of you. But then Jemmy, idiot that he is, moves. A flash of movement. The club swings. Jemmy ducks, shoves, runs. You follow. Not because you want to, but because you don't fancy getting a cracked skull for someone else's mistake. You run harder than you ever have, the cold slicing your lungs, your heart slamming against your ribs like it's trying to escape too. You make it to the river before you stop. Jemmy's gone, vanished, or caught. You won't know until tomorrow, maybe not ever. You sit on the embankment, panting, heart still hammering. You didn't get the body, you didn't get the coins, but you're not dead. And sometimes that's enough. You lie low for 2 days. No graveyards, no anatomy halls, no Jemmy. The streets are whispering about two men seen fleeing from a cracked open grave, about a watchman who came back limping, teeth gritted and ego bruised. Nobody knows your name, not yet. But the description? Muddy boots, shovel scar on one hand, eyes like you've seen too many things rot. That's spreading fast. You keep your head down. Shuffle through the streets like you belong to the fog itself. You sleep in the day when the sunlight, or what passes for it in Edinburgh, blots out curiosity. At night, you haunt alleys without touching a single fence or headstone. But hunger's a demanding landlord, and coin doesn't multiply in a pocket. So when a knock rattles your door, late on the third evening, you already know what it means. You open the door to a boy, 10, maybe 11, with soot on his cheeks and too much urgency in his eyes. They want you, he whispers, behind Cowgate, tonight. No name, just they. But you understand. It's the surgeons again, or someone close enough. You grab your gear and move. Cowgate's the underbelly of the city. Narrow streets, flanked by buildings that seem to lean inward like they're conspiring. The gutters run with things you try not to identify. The air always smells of boiled something. Laundry, stew, soap, hope. A man waits near a carriage, cloaked and stiff, like someone paid to stand very still. He doesn't greet you. He just gestures to the back of the wagon. Inside, 2 metal crates, bolted, clean. No straw, no dirt. Guards, he mutters. They've started patrolling in shifts. We need someone quieter. You glance at the crates again. How fresh. Burial was this morning. Twins. Died of fever. Mother wants them back but couldn't pay for proper preservation. Twins. You pause. It hits different. Always does when it's children. You didn't sign up for this. Except you did. You always do. Triple pay, the man adds, sensing your hesitation. You in? You nod once, jaw tight. The grave's in the south quarter. Quieter now after the failed patrol. But there's something else. Something colder. The grass is slick. The sky? That purplish haze that says dawn is somewhere off stage, tapping its foot. You arrive alone. No Jemmy. No Callum. Just you and the 2 names scrawled on the slip of paper. Elsie and James. 3 years old. You hate that you read the names. You find the spot. Still soft, just enough time for the dirt to begin settling like a tired sigh. You kneel. Your fingers tremble as they grip the shovel. Not from fear, though it's there, but from something quieter, meaner. Guilt, maybe. Or the sharp awareness that you're not just a thief tonight. You're a line crosser. Historians still argue whether resurrectionists had personal codes, lines they wouldn't cross. Children, priests, suicides. Some claimed there was honor among thieves. You never really believed that, but right now, as you press the shovel down and feel the soil give way, you wish you had something to lean on besides your own blurred morality. The coffins are small, toy-like. You expect dolls to fall out when you lift the lids. Instead, silence, pale limbs, clenched fingers. You stare for a long moment, and then you do the job. Not quickly, not carelessly. You wrap them with more care than usual, like you're hoping some shred of tenderness might redeem you. You even pad the sack with your own coat so they don't knock against the crate. No one will know, but you'll know. You carry them, one under each arm, like something precious and cursed. The wagon's waiting. The man nods, counts out the coins, and says nothing as he takes them inside. You stand there a moment longer than necessary, the wind tugging at your sleeves. What's it for, you ask. He doesn't look at you. Anatomy class. You close your eyes, then you turn away. That night, you don't go home. You walk the streets instead, boots scuffing cobblestones that seem to echo louder than they should. Somewhere near Grassmarket, you pass a priest lighting candles outside a chapel. He nods at you. You nod back. You wonder if he'd light one for Elsie and James. You wonder if you should ask, but you don't. Instead, you walk into a tavern, order the strongest drink on offer, and sit with your back to the wall, your face to the door. You tell yourself it was work, that it paid well, that someone else would have done it worse, and none of it helps, because when you finally sleep, slumped forward on a rickety tavern bench, you dream of two tiny coffins, floating down the Norlock, lids open, eyes watching, and this time, in your dream, they sit up. There are rules to this job. Unspoken, unwritten, but deeply felt. Rule 1. Never rob the same graveyard 2 nights in a row. Even if the soil's soft, even if the priest is blind and half the watchmen are nursing hangovers, you don't tempt fate. Graveyards, like people, remember. Rule 2. Always know your escape routes. 3 of them, minimum. Alleyways, drainage tunnels, even the backs of bakeries. Anywhere you can slip into the night like fog in a bottle. Because when the shouting starts, you won't have time to guess. Rule 3. Never dig without your tools. A resurrectionist without his gear is just a trespasser with dirty shoes. And dirty shoes won't pay the rent. Tonight, you've brought everything. Your crowbar is oiled and quiet. Your sack, patched twice this week, still smells of river water and mildew. The rope is coiled neatly like a sleeping snake in your coat pocket. And the shovel, your oldest companion, has a new handle. The old one snapped last Thursday when you tripped over a root and landed teeth first in someone's grandmother. You've also added something new to your arsenal, a lantern with a thick black hood. It casts only the smallest circle of light, barely enough to see by, but just enough to avoid falling into an open grave or knocking over a tombstone like a drunk goat. Tonight's job is a risky one. You're heading to a churchyard you swore you'd never return to. Not after the incident with the groundskeeper, the sheep, and the unfortunate misunderstanding about who belonged in the wheelbarrow. But the pay is triple, and you need it because someone's stolen your rent money, or you lost it, or maybe you never had it at all and just believed the lie long enough to forget. The grave is unmarked, a pauper's pit tucked into the shadowy edge of the grounds near the crumbling fence. These are the hardest. No headstones, no records, just guesses. You dig anyway. The soil here is dry. For once, it crumbles beneath your shovel like stale cake, revealing layers of old roots and broken pottery. You don't ask why there's always pottery. Edinburgh buries its secrets with whatever's lying around. You reach wood in under 20 minutes, but it's not a coffin. It's a box. Metal, locked heavy. You pause. Historians still debate whether resurrectionists ever uncovered things they weren't supposed to. Sealed church secrets, Smugglers' stashes, or worse. You pry open the edge. The lid creaks like a scream caught in a tin throat. Inside bones, not arranged, just tossed, jumbled. You found a charnel box. These were once common, places to dump older remains when a graveyard filled up and they needed room. Respectful? Not especially. Practical? Very. You stare into the box. A skull grins up at you, teeth chipped, nose missing. You sigh. This won't pay. No one wants dusty femurs and time stained vertebrae. You need soft flesh. You need marrow. You need something that still wrinkles under the knife. You dig further, trying a few feet down, a few feet over. Eventually, you strike something else. Wood again. You freeze. Not because of what you found, but because of what you've heard. Footsteps. Fast. Crunching gravel. Close. You duck, kill the lantern. Press yourself against the side of the pit. The footsteps pause. A whistle. Low. Curious. Then a voice. I know you're there. You stay silent. I can wait, it says, calm. Too calm. You peek over the edge. It's not a watchman. Worse. It's another resurrectionist. You recognize him. Ned the Digger. Alston. Broad shoulders. Broken nose. Reputation for working alone because his last two partners fell ill. He smiles when he sees you. Well, he says, didn't expect company. You climb out slowly, hands visible, no sudden moves. He eyes your shovel. What did you find? Bones, you say. Old ones, nothing worth carrying. He steps forward. Mind if I look? You block the path with your body. Mind if you don't? Silence. Then a chuckle. All right, all right. He backs off, but not before tossing a wrapped handkerchief at your feet. For your trouble, you wait until he's gone before you touch it. Inside, 2 silver shillings. Payment, or hush money. You don't know which is worse. You take them anyway. You rebury the box, smooth the earth, leave no trace. But as you walk home, the shillings burn cold in your palm. You can feel them pulsing like teeth. The next morning, you pass the churchyard again. There's a fresh patch of dirt where you left none. You don't stop. You don't ask. Some things are better left buried. It's not a solo gig. Not really. You might climb over walls alone, or drag a corpse across cobbles without so much as a whispered conversation. But make no mistake, grave robbing is a team sport. And the worst part? You don't get to pick the team. Take tonight, for example. You're partnered with Davy Barlow. Davy is enthusiastic. That's the nicest word you have for him. He once dislocated a shoulder trying to speed dig, like there was some kind of prize for finishing early. He whistles while he works. He talks to the bodies. And worst of all, he brings snacks. I packed sausage rolls, he announces cheerfully as you both crouch behind a stone mausoleum watching the graveyard for patrols. Proper pork ones this time. Last week's were pigeon, and I'll admit, bit chewy. You don't respond. You're too busy calculating whether this job is worth the emotional injury of spending 3 hours with someone who uses the phrase, let's dig like Dickens. Still, the body's worth a decent purse. A middle-aged lawyer with no family, buried with haste and moderate respect. A coffin, you know, is thin as wafer and probably surrounded by roots like black veins. Perfect. You move fast. Davy's chatter fades once the shovel hits soil. You let him dig while you scout. It's not that you trust him. It's just that watching him fumble with a spade is like watching a cat try to play the violin. Entertaining, if inefficient. As you circle the graves, you notice something strange. Another set of tracks. Fresh ones. Not yours. Not Davy's. Not a watchman either. Too small. Too precise. Someone else is here. You crouch low behind a tilted monument and listen. Nothing. But the air feels wrong, thicker. Davy waves you over. He's hit the coffin. You join him, and together you lift the lid. A rush of stale air spills out, warm and sour. The man inside is fresh enough to still look smug. His mouth is half open, like he died mid objection. Barristers, Davy mutters, chewing a bit of his sausage roll. Always talking. You say nothing. Just wrap the body and tie the knots. Quick, practiced movements. Then a twig snaps. You both freeze. This time you see the figure. Across the yard, half hidden by shadow, someone's watching. They're not moving, just standing. Coat too long, face obscured. Friend of yours? Davy whispers. You shake your head. The figure lifts a hand, just once, and disappears into the trees. You stare at the spot for a long time. Davy, oblivious, hoists the sack onto his back and starts trudging toward the exit like he's off to market. Historians still argue whether rival resurrectionist crews ever worked together, or if it was always backstabbing and shovel fighting. Tonight, you lean toward the latter, because whoever that was, they weren't here for moral support. The rest of the route is uneventful. You deliver the body. The assistant at the anatomy school grunts, weighs the sack with the dispassionate air of someone checking potatoes, and hands you two purses. Davy takes his and promptly buys a round of whiskey with most of it. You watch him from across the tavern. He's regaling the barkeep with a story about how he once dug up a man who bit him. You don't want to ask if it's true. The more important question is, did he bite back? You finish your drink and step outside. It's late, cold. The wind cuts through your coat like a blade of glass. You start the long walk home, but something tugs at you, a figure in the graveyard. The way they just watched. There's a kind of etiquette among grave robbers, a shared silence. You don't mess with another man's dig. You don't follow him. You certainly don't observe him, like he's the one in the coffin. You change direction. You walk back to the graveyard. It's empty now. Quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears and makes your heartbeat sound too loud. You check the spot where the figure stood. No footprints, but the grass is bent, flattened. Someone was here. You circle once, slowly. No signs of digging, no recent graves disturbed. But as you walk past the mausoleum, something catches your eye. Carved into the stone, fresh and jagged, yours next. You stare at it for a long moment, then you leave. You walk faster this time. Back at your room, you bolt the door. You tuck your shovel beside the bed. You sleep with one eye open and the faint taste of fear on your tongue. The next morning, you visit the cemetery again. Broad daylight, hat pulled low. The carving is gone. Weathered? Scrubbed? Never there? Hard to say. But that night, you dig with someone else. And you keep checking over your shoulder, waiting for a coat that doesn't move and a face you never see. Time is not your friend. It works against you in the most inconvenient ways. When you're halfway through a dig and the sun starts peeking over the horizon, or when rigor mortis sets in faster than expected and you have to wrestle limbs that refuse to cooperate. But the worst is the waiting, because corpses, as you well know, have a shelf life. Once buried, a body begins to rot, quickly, enthusiastically, especially in summer, especially if the coffin leaks, especially if the undertaker couldn't be bothered to tamp the soil properly, or if they used the cheap kind of wood, the stuff that practically invites in worms and water like it's hosting a garden party. That's why tonight you're in a rush. You've got an order for a young adult male, under 2 days buried. Specific. Yes, but you've learned not to ask. The professors have their preferences, and you're not here to challenge their curriculum. The grave's in the northwest corner of the old burial ground near Canongate. The place always smells faintly of sea brine, as though the nearby harbor sends its salt soaked regrets every time someone dies inland. The ground is sandier here, which helps. Less mud, more crumb, but it also means the scent of decay travels faster. You arrive alone. You've learned to work alone when the job's this fresh. Fewer hands, fewer voices, fewer people to blame if the corpse is already more soup than student. You find the grave, a modest patch, only marked with a wooden board and some wilted thistles, buried quickly, with minimal fuss. The death certificate said, unknown fever, which in Edinburgh is a little like saying unknown puddle. Everything's a fever. Everything's unknown. You start digging. The first few inches go fast. Then the familiar resistance. The thud of the shovel as it strikes something denser than soil. You pause, listening, always listening. You've learned to tell the difference between roots and ribs, between stone and coffin, between silence and something else. Tonight, just roots and rotten wood. You pry the lid open. He's still there. A boy barely 20, skin gone waxy, hair damp against his forehead, like he's still sweating it out. The fever must have been vicious. His hands are curled like claws, his mouth frozen in a half-formed scream. You wince. You don't usually look at faces. Tonight you made the mistake of doing it before the sack went on. The body's heavy, heavier than expected. You suspect he was swollen with fluid, or maybe he died mid-seizure. Either way, it takes more effort to lift him than usual. You grunt softly, sling him into the sack, and haul him out just as the first drops of rain begin to spit from the sky. Perfect. Damp air means faster rot. You've got less than 6 hours before this lad turns into something surgeons will politely decline. You shoulder him like a sack of potatoes with a tragic backstory and begin the walk. And tonight, you take a shortcut. A foolish one. There's a back alley behind the university, one most resurrectionists avoid. Too narrow, too exposed, too close to the constable's patrol route. But time is ticking, and you can already smell the sweet, syrupy edge of decomposition tickling your nose. You cut through. Halfway down, you hear a shout. Not a patrol, not a watchman. A rival, the worst kind. Fergus Half-Eye Moore. Called that, not because he's blind in one eye, he isn't, but because he blinks a lot, and it's incredibly off-putting. He's got a reputation for scavenging jobs and starting turf fights. He once stabbed a man over a misidentified ankle bone. Well, well, Fergus calls, stepping into view. Thought I smelled a job. You don't stop walking. Come now, he croons. Let's have a look at what you've got. Might be worth my time. I'm on deadline, you mutter. Step aside. But Fergus doesn't. Historians still argue whether there were formal territories among resurrectionists, or if it was all just violent guesswork and dirty looks. Judging by Fergus's expression, you suspect it's the latter. He reaches for your sack. Big mistake. You shove him. Hard. The kind of shove that says, I'm not above letting you join the guy I'm carrying. Fergus stumbles, swears, grabs his own shovel, but by then you're running. It's an awkward sprint. You've got a 130-pound cadaver slung over your shoulder like a duffel bag full of lost innocence, and your boots slap the cobblestones like wet fish, but you're faster than Fergus. Maybe because he smokes. Maybe because you're terrified. You round a corner, nearly knock over a flower cart, and finally reach the delivery entrance. The assistant opens the door just as you lurch in like a man running a marathon in a haunted house. He says nothing, just holds out his hand. You drop the sack. He weighs it with the ease of someone who's seen too much. Then he frowns, bit Soft, he mutters, prodding the side. Fever, you gasp, still catching your breath. Didn't want to wait. He grunts and drops a half full purse into your palm. Less than you expected. You stare at him. That's not the price. That's the price now, he says flatly. Next time, bring him fresher. You want to argue, but your knees are trembling. Your lungs feel like old bellows, and you're still hearing Fergus's voice echoing down your spine. You take the coin. You leave. And when you finally reach your room, soaked to the bone, you sit on your bed and stare at the wall. Time is not your friend. But in this business, you don't need friends, just bodies. And maybe a head start. Sometimes the coffin isn't empty. You prepare for bones, for stiffness, for smells that climb up your nose and decide to stay a while. You prepare for rats, mold, even the occasional misplaced heirloom still clutched in a cold hand. But nothing quite prepares you for movement. It happens on a bitterly cold night, the kind where your breath hangs like laundry and your fingers feel like someone else's. You've got a new partner, temporary, borrowed from another crew. He calls himself Finch, small fellow, sharp features, eyes that never stop darting. The job is routine, or it should be. You've been hired to recover a young woman buried in a family plot just outside Leith. Wealthy, allegedly asthmatic, likely embalmed, but sometimes the family skimps on the process. That's why you were chosen. Your gentle hands, as the surgeon's assistant once said, like he was praising a florist instead of a glorified body thief. You climb the wall easily. Finch scurries after you like a shadow in fast forward. The grave is recent, 3 days in. The headstone reads, Marianne Kirk, 1806-1832. Beloved daughter, gentle spirit. You whisper an apology out of habit. Finch snorts. She's not listening, mate. You don't respond. The digging is clean. No roots, no rocks, just layer after layer of cold, willing earth. The coffin comes up clean. No water damage, no sink. A good sign. You lift the lid, and she moves. Not much, not fast. Just the faintest twitch of her fingers. Finch yelps like he's seen the devil doing cartwheels and nearly drops his end of the shovel. You freeze. Historians still debate how often people were buried alive in the 19th century. Some say it was rare, urban legend stuff. Others insist it happened more than anyone wanted to admit, especially among the poor or the sick, when a doctor's death diagnosis could be more of a guess than a certainty. You, at this moment, don't care about the statistics. You care about the fact that Mary Ann Kirk is not entirely dead. Her eyes flutter. Her mouth opens slightly. A wet gasp escapes her lips like someone breathing through porridge. Christ on a biscuit, Finch whispers. She's alive. No, you say, voice thin. She's dying. There's a difference. You've heard of this. Delayed death. Some call it the resurrection effect. The brain clings to the last shreds of life, and something, cold air movement, pulls it back. Only briefly, only barely. You lean close. Her eyes open fully now. Pale blue, cloudy, confused. She doesn't scream. She can't. There's no strength in her lungs. Just a sound like a sigh, trying to remember how to become a scream. You reach for her hand. It's cold. Ice cold. But she grips your finger with surprising strength. Then lets go. Then stillness. Proper this time. Final. You close the lid, slowly, gently. Finch is still backing away, like the grave might chase him. I'm not carrying that, he stammers. That's cursed. She's dead now, you say. Don't care. She blinked at me. You saw it. You exhale long and low. Go, you say. I'll finish this one. He hesitates, then bolts. You stare down at the coffin, hands trembling. You should leave her. Forget it. But something compels you. You carry her, slowly, carefully. You deliver her alone. The assistant raises an eyebrow. Where's the other one? Scared off, you mutter. He opens the sack, studies the girl. You wrap her like she's glass, he says, almost impressed. You don't reply. He hands you a pouch, heavier than usual. You all right? He asks as you turn. You pause. No. You leave. Back at your room, you light a candle and stare into the flame like it has answers. You wonder how long she was awake before you found her. If she heard the shovels, if she felt the lid lift. You wonder if she thought she was being saved or stolen. That night, you can't sleep. You lie on your side, listening to the wind whisper against the glass, and you try to convince yourself that her grip didn't feel like a plea. Edinburgh has its ghosts, not the sheet wearing, chain rattling kind, though there are pubs that swear otherwise, but the quieter ones. The kind that hang around the edges of memory, cling to the smell of damp cobblestones, and nestle in the folds of your coat when you're not looking. You carry them whether you mean to or not. You've got a routine now, not by choice, by necessity. Wake late, eat little, drink enough to quiet the heart but not the hands, then walk. Always walk. It keeps the nightmares from catching up. And besides, you're too well known now to loiter. The taverns know your face. So do the university clerks. So do the priests. Tonight, you're not digging. Not yet. You're doing recon. One of the few parts of the job that doesn't involve a spade or a sack. You walk up Calton Hill. The view is sweeping. Cathedrals, chimneys, and the occasional broken silhouette of a man regretting his choices. The wind is sharp tonight, and it carries the smell of coal fires and something floral, a rare moment of sweetness. In a city that mostly smells like guilt and soot, you're scouting a site behind an old kirk. The grave is fresh, still mounded, with ribbons on the iron fence, like death decided to throw a going-away party. It's a young man, a student, they say, caught in a duel. Not uncommon. Apparently, honor kills faster than typhoid. You make a note of the soil. Loose. That's good. Shallow. Better. But then you notice something strange. A small pile of stones just beside the grave, neatly stacked. You frown. It's not a grave marker. Not a boundary. Just a stack. 5 stones. Small. Balanced with care. It's a signal. You've seen it before. Other resurrectionists leave them, messages, warnings, or claims. The problem is, no one agrees on what they mean. Some say it means already taken. Others say, watch yourself. A few say it means there's something here, but you don't want it. Historians still argue whether grave robbers operated like street gangs, complete with codes, turf, and sabotage. You'd argue yes, except even gangs rarely mess with the dead for a living. You make another note. Then you move. Tonight you're meeting someone, a buyer, not a surgeon, not a university, a collector. They've been sniffing around the city for months. Rich, secretive, English. They want something specific. A preserved child's skeleton, complete. Not dissected, not damaged, just intact. You said no at first, then they doubled the offer. Now you're listening. You meet in an apothecary after hours. The kind of place where the air smells like lavender and arsenic, and everything behind glass looks like it might bite if you reach too far. The collector is wearing gloves. Indoors. Of course. They don't give a name. Just slide a pouch across the counter and nod toward a sketch. A child, 6 or 7, posed as if mid-step. It's not medicine. It's not science. It's art. You leave with a bitter taste in your mouth and a list of cemeteries where children were buried in the last month. You tell yourself you won't do it. That's the line. That's the last line. You said that 3 lines ago. Back on the street, the city seems sharper. The gas lamps flicker like they're whispering to each other. A dog barks in the distance, and for a moment, it sounds like laughter. You pull your coat tighter. You pass a church where a choir is rehearsing. You stop. The voices are high and bright, children's voices, and suddenly, the money in your pocket feels heavier than a corpse. You walk home with slow steps. You don't eat. You sit at your table and stare at the sketch until the candle gutters out. You could ignore it. You could sell to someone else. You could walk away. But you know you won't. Because the thing about grave robbing is, once you start saying yes to the money, it gets harder to say no to the next offer. Especially when the ghosts don't say a word. They just watch. It's amazing how quickly the respectable forget you exist. By daylight, you're invisible. Just another smudge in the alleys. Another face half swallowed by scarf and soot. But in the back corridors of the university, where the air smells like formaldehyde and ambition, you are tolerated. Barely. You're the errand boy of anatomy, the delivery man no one greets, the ghost no one studies. Tonight is one of those drop-offs. Rain hisses against the flagstones as you carry your latest parcel. Middle-aged man, late consumption, nice teeth, still warm, if that helps anyone's conscience. You press the bell once. The assistant, a young lad with the kind of face that looks like it's never been properly tired, opens the door. He doesn't look at you. He never does. Just gestures with a jerk of the chin toward the table near the back, where three other bundles already lie like groceries someone forgot to put away. You place yours gently, check the ropes, step back. Still nothing. No nod. No thank you. No good evening. Despite the body, you clear your throat. Rained harder this time. Had to wait in a ditch. He glances up briefly. Wipe your boots before you come in next time. And just like that, you're a stain on the floor again. Historians still argue whether the surgeons truly believed in the nobility of science, or if it was just an excuse to look the other way, while people like you scraped the underside of morality with muddy hands. It doesn't matter now, because even if they do believe it, they certainly don't believe in you. You used to be curious. Once, you'd look at the jars of floating hearts and livers and wonder what it all meant. Now you only see what the body fetches by the pound. The assistant turns away. Business concluded. You don't move. Do they ever ask, you say? He pauses. Who? The students? The surgeons? Do they ever ask who the bodies were? He frowns, more annoyed than intrigued. They're not here to learn names. They're here to learn structure. You nod, slowly. That's the problem, isn't it? You're all just structures. Once dead, you're no longer history. You're meat with a narrative no one reads. You turn to leave, but something stops you. A door at the back of the room is open, just slightly. Usually it's closed, locked, off limits. But tonight, a sliver of candlelight spills through the gap. You hesitate, then move closer. Inside is a private chamber. Cleaner, quieter, reserved for special demonstrations. Advanced students only. The air is heavier here. Still, like the room itself is holding its breath. And on the center table, a child, not a cadaver, a display, fully posed, bones wired in delicate precision, small enough to be 7, the same size as the sketch the collector showed you. You step closer. The nameplate reads, Anonymous Juvenile Skeleton, Specimen 4. No origin, no date, no record. You stare longer than you should. The bones are white, bleached, shining like polished ivory. But the shoes? Someone left them on. Tiny leather slippers, scuffed at the toe. You step back. Leave the room. Outside, the air feels colder, sharper, like the fog has teeth tonight. You walk fast. turning corners without thinking. You pass a preacher yelling about judgment, a drunk man singing about onions, and a girl selling tulips from a basket that looks older than she is. The city doesn't know what you've seen, and it wouldn't care if it did. Back in your room, you empty the pouch onto the table. Coins clink softly. You stare at them. You remember the shoes. You wonder who tied them, who sat beside the coffin, who cried when it was lowered into the ground. You light a candle and set the pouch next to it. You don't touch it again that night. That evening, in your dreams, you're not digging. You're standing inside the anatomy theater. The bleachers are full, but you're the one on the table. And no one asks your name. Graveyards don't like you. They don't whisper. They don't cry, but they remember. And some nights, you'd swear the stone paths shift underfoot, leading you in circles like a dog chasing guilt. Tonight, you're in the old kirkyard, at Dowry. The soil's thin here, like the land resents the weight of so many secrets. They used to bury plague victims in mass trenches up this way. And sometimes when you dig, you hit more than one. The job tonight is straightforward. Newly buried merchant, no known relatives, buried quickly after a chest congestion. You know that means pneumonia, which means a fresher specimen than usual. The university didn't even haggle. They just handed you the coin up front, which is always suspicious. You've brought Callum along again. He's grumbling before you even scale the fence. Iron cages, he mutters, should be illegal, like burying folk in jail. He's talking about the mort safes. You've come across them before. Big metal frameworks that sit over coffins like a grim picnic basket, invented to keep you out. Iron rods, locked hatches, some even have spikes. They're not subtle, they're not charming, and they make your job a royal pain. The merchant's grave is one of those. Great. You circle the site, crouch down, check the bolts. This one's newer. Steel frame, sunk deep, bolted into the earth. Not designed for finesse. Definitely not for speed. Callum scratches his beard. Well, could always lift him from the side. With what? The power of friendship? Well, don't knock it, he says. Got me out of debt once. You ignore him and pull your tools. Resurrectionists have tricks. Long hooks for fishing bodies out like trout. Special spades that slice sideways. Ropes with knots placed just so. You pull a flat wrench, custom forged by a blacksmith who owed you a favor, and begin loosening the bolts. It's slow, painfully so. Historians still debate who invented the first mort safe. Some claim it was a reaction to Burke and Hare. Others say communities banded together, pooling money to protect their dead long before those two got knife happy. Either way, you hate them. You hate the groan of the bolts, the smell of rust, and the way the soil always settles oddly around them, like even the earth doesn't want them there. After nearly an hour, you're sweating. The wind bites, but you're steaming. The cage lifts, barely. You work together, slow and steady, shifting it aside like a makeshift portcullis. The grave yawns beneath. You dig quickly now. The ground gives way, dry but dense. Finally, the coffin. It's cheap. Veneer that's already flaking. You pry it open, and he's there. Still wearing a cravat, you mutter, at least they buried him with a sense of drama. Callum nods. Reckon he wrote his own epitaph. You start the lift, and that's when the spring fires. There's a clang, sharp, loud, and something slices across the coffin edge. A steel bar shoots upward, narrowly missing your hand. You fall backward into the mud. Callum curses so loud, you're surprised the dead don't file a complaint. You scramble up, breathless. What the hell was that? Callum points to the base of the mort safe. Trap. New kind. Spring-loaded. I heard whispers, but never seen one. You look back at the grave. Sure enough, Nestled under the coffin, there's a mechanism, a crank, and a hinge. Someone rigged this grave like it was Fort Knox. Who does that? You mutter. Folk who really didn't want you visiting. You consider abandoning the job. But the coin was good. Too good. You retrieve the body, careful this time. No sudden movements. No heroic grabs. You both lift, shift, wrap, and tie like professionals dodging knives. When you finally haul him out and set him against the wall, you both exhale like men who narrowly avoided widowhood. Callum looks at you. Next time, maybe something easier, like smuggling haggis into England. You nod, and then you both hear it. A click. You spin. Another cage. This one closing on the grave next door. You stare. The bars lower on their own, slowly, like some grim carnival ride. Then stillness. You didn't touch that one. No one did. You look at Callum. Let's not stay. He's already climbing the wall. You don't run. You vault. Back in your room, you sit by the fire, holding your hand close to the flames, like you're trying to melt the memory of that steel bar. You wonder if the merchant set up the trap himself, paid extra, knowing someone would come. Maybe he didn't fear death, but you. The next night, you pass the kirk again. All the mort safes are shut now, even the ones that weren't there before. You walk faster, and behind you, in the wind, you think you hear metal breathing. You've always known that not everyone buried is meant to be disturbed. You tell yourself you dig for the science, for the coin, for the simple fact that someone has to. But every so often, you get a job that makes even your shovel hesitate. Tonight is one of those jobs. It starts with a letter. No name, just a wax seal pressed with a bird's talon. Inside, directions. Payment in advance. Too much for a normal body. And at the bottom, a note. Only take what lies in the third grave. That's it. You should throw it in the fire. You don't, because money is louder than instinct. You follow the directions, north of the city, well past the last of the lamp-lit lanes, out where the trees lean low and the air feels old. The cemetery is half forgotten, its fence swallowed by vines and time. Most of the headstones lean like they've grown tired of standing. You pass the first grave, cracked, unmarked. The second, sunken, a depression in the earth like a breath held too long. And then the third, it's pristine, newer. The soil is untouched. The headstone simple. AF, 1831. No date of birth, no message. Just two initials that sound more like a warning than a name. You begin to dig. The air gets colder the deeper you go. Your breath clouds the grave. Your fingers numb. You press on. You hit the coffin. Oak. Clean lines, sturdy. You pause, and then pry it open. Inside is a woman, or something that once was. But she hasn't rotted. Not even a little. Her skin is pale, but not the gray-white of the dead. It's smooth, preserved. Her dress is spotless. Lace cuffs, high collar, not a speck of soil. You swallow. Callum, who insisted on tagging along despite your warnings, stares. She's sleeping. You shake your head. No one sleeps underground. She's not dead, he whispers. She's not alive either. Historians still argue whether some graves held effigies or staged corpses. Elaborate preservations meant to test the skills of surgeons or to preserve family dignity. But this doesn't feel like dignity. This feels like a dare. You move to lift her. Callum stops you. Maybe we shouldn't. You look at him. He's pale, trembling. Unusual for him. You try to laugh, but the sound doesn't come. We've taken worse. Have we? You ignore him. You reach down. As your fingers touch her shoulder, her eyes open, just like that. Wide, glassy, unblinking. You freeze. She doesn't move otherwise, doesn't breathe. But those eyes are looking through you. Callum gasps. drops his lantern. The light sputters out. You're swallowed in darkness so thick it clings. You yank your hand back, slam the coffin shut. Dirt pours back over it in frantic shovelfuls. Neither of you speaks until you're over the wall, boots sliding in the grass. You make it back to town without saying a word. You don't talk about what happened. You don't finish the job. You leave the coin on a stranger's doorstep the next morning and pretend you never saw the seal. But you remember. You always remember, because sometimes when you close your eyes, you see hers. Glassy, endless, still wide open. That night, and many after, you don't go near graves. You drink too much. You walk in circles. You avoid shadows, even your own. One evening, weeks later, you return to that cemetery. You don't know why. Curiosity, regret, stupidity. But when you get there, the grave is gone. Not filled in, not overgrown. Gone. No third headstone. No initials, just grass. And the faint outline of where something once was. Callum won't speak to you anymore. Not since that night. He's gone quiet, sunken into himself like a grave that never quite closes. And you keep digging. But every now and then, when your shovel hits wood, you pause. Not because of guilt, because you're afraid the next one might open its own eyes. Your reputation has changed. Not that you ever expected fame. Resurrectionists don't get statues. But the whispers are different now. It's not just, he's reliable. It's not just, he's quiet. Now it's, he's the one who dug the third grave. They don't say it like praise. They say it like folklore. You can feel it when you walk into a tavern. Eyes that flick away too fast. Hands that don't reach to greet yours. The younger diggers avoid you outright. Some mutter about bad luck. One swore you came back with a mark on your hand. You didn't. Not one you can see. But there are nights your fingertips tingle, like something cold is buried just under the skin. Tonight, you need a win. Something normal. Something routine. That's why you take a job at Greyfriars. Famous cemetery. Tourists visit by day. Locals avoid it by night. Too many stories. Too many unquiet ends. But it pays well, and the body's fresh. A professor of Latin died in his sleep. No wife, no children. Just a parrot, allegedly. You go alone. You've learned that partners come with consequences, some louder than others. The gate creaks like it's announcing your arrival to the dead. You ignore it. You've walked this ground before. The grave is near the back wall, beside a collapsed mausoleum. You find it easily, still fresh, the wreaths not yet wilted. You start to dig. The shovel moves with practiced rhythm, muscle memory. 1, 2 scoop, 1, 2 scoop. You could do this blindfolded, and some nights it feels like you have. You reach the coffin. It's heavier than expected. You brace yourself, lift the lid, and nearly laugh. Inside, laid out in a satin-lined box, is a suit of armor. Not a corpse, not bones, not even the professor's coat. Just a full suit, helmet, breastplate, gauntlets, the works, polished, intact. Lying there like it was waiting for a knighthood. You stare. Is this a joke? You murmur aloud. But there's no one to laugh. You reach down, lift the helmet. Underneath, a scroll. Latin. Faded. Cursed looking in the way anything written in ancient ink tends to be when buried next to something that once held a sword. You sit back on your heels. This isn't a grave. It's a message. And it's not for you. Historians still argue whether false burials were used to hide relics or trick robbers. You've just become a footnote in that argument. You examine the scroll. You read enough Latin to catch a few phrases. Vita post mortem. Custos. Non dormire. Life after death. Guardian. Will not sleep. You carefully replace the helmet. You do not touch the rest. You cover the grave. You don't fill it in the usual way, with haste, like a child hiding broken crockery, but with care. Each shovelful measured, almost reverent. You stand when you're done, not sure what you've unearthed. You walk home and find a note on your door, scrawled in uneven ink. You weren't meant to find that. No signature. You check the street, empty. The air is too still. Back in your room, you relight the fire. Sit beside it. Watch the flames twist into shapes that look like regrets. You don't sleep that night. You think about the armor. You think about the scroll. You think about who or what you nearly disturbed. And then you realize something. That suit was too clean. No dust, no mold, no decay. It hadn't been there long, which means someone recently dug that grave. Not for burial, but for storage. You glance toward your shovel. For the first time in years, it looks like the wrong tool for the job. You consider leaving the city, starting over, maybe Dundee, maybe even somewhere warm, like you've always joked, but you know you won't, because beneath it all, beneath the rot and the whispers and the coins that no longer shine, you still want to know who buries armor and what's it guarding. You start paying attention to things that never used to bother you: patterns, symbols, places where graves appear, disappear, or seem to breathe differently underfoot. Before it was simple: find body, dig body, sell body, eat soup. Now, you linger in cemeteries after the job's done, walking in wide, quiet circles, staring at carvings on headstones, and wondering why some names are chiseled deeper than others, why some stones face east and some don't face at all. Tonight, you're working in New Calton. It's a cleaner cemetery, well kept, upper class dead, no rats in the footpaths. You're picking up a surgeon this time. Ironic. Dr. Finley Baird, age 47. Known for his work on neural excitation through chemical application, which sounds like he spent his career poking frogs and seeing what twitched. The papers mourned him as a visionary lost too soon. You mourn him as an easy haul. You're alone again. Not by preference, but because no one will work with you anymore. Callum's vanished. Finch went back to selling boot polish. Even Jimmy's pretending not to know your name. You don't blame them. You just shovel. The soil is soft tonight. Overturned recently. You suspect someone beat you to the job. But when you reach the coffin, it's intact. You open it. Dr. Baird is still there, looking annoyed, even in death, jaw clenched, hands folded like he's resisting something. You almost expect him to sit up and critique your grip. You haul him out, sack him, tie him, start dragging. But halfway back to the gate, you stop. Not because of a noise, because of a feeling that someone is walking directly behind you. You turn. No one. But the air is wrong, pressing in, heavy with silence. You drop the sack for a second and scan the shadows. And there it is again. Footsteps. Soft. Deliberate. Syncing with yours, but always just half a beat behind. You freeze. Hold your breath. Nothing. Then, a whisper. Not from behind, but inside your coat. You shouldn't have taken me. You whip around. No one. The sack is still on the ground, tied shut. You approach it cautiously, and you realize your coat pocket is open. The scroll, the one from the armor grave. You never meant to keep it. Meant to return it, or burn it, or forget. But curiosity is a stubborn tenant, and now it's awake. You open the pocket. The scroll is gone. In its place, a small white object, a tooth, human, polished smooth like it's been rolled in a pocket for decades. You stare. Historians still debate whether resurrectionists ever brought something back with them. Superstition, most say. The rest aren't sure. You sure aren't. You leave Dr. Baird on the slab behind the anatomy hall. No receipt, no coin. You just walk. Fast. Not toward home, toward someone who might know. You visit Agnes. She's a bone washer, works the edges of the trade, cleaning skulls, polishing vertebrae, sometimes carving talismans from femurs for clients you try not to imagine. She lives in a narrow room above a cobbler's shop, where everything smells like wax and bad decisions. She opens the door in her nightclothes, eyes already narrowed. I was hoping you were dead. You hand her the tooth. She doesn't ask where you got it, just drops it into a dish of water and watches it float. That's not good, she mutters. What is it? Something old. That's not helpful. She gives you a look. Neither is this tooth. She fishes it out. It's still warm. I don't know what you picked up, she says, but it doesn't want to go back. Not yet. You don't sleep that night. You sit in your chair, staring at the wall, feeling the weight of a single tooth in your coat pocket. You dream of metal coffins and Latin whispers. You wake to find your candle extinguished and your boots soaked as if you'd walked somewhere in your sleep. You check the pocket again. The tooth is gone. In its place, the scroll, unrolled. You spend the next few days trying to act normal. You take smaller jobs, paupers' graves, nothing fancy. You sell to back alley doctors instead of the university. You don't visit mausoleums. You avoid anything with initials or iron. But no matter where you go, people notice you. Not the way they used to. Not the wary glance or the quiet hush as you walk into a tavern. This is different. They stare, long, unblinking, like you're something already halfway underground. It starts with the butcher. You pass his stall on Canongate. He doesn't speak, just watches as you go by. Cleaver, hanging limp in one hand, thumb dripping blood. Then the flower girl. You've bought from her before. Small, chewed fingernails, crooked teeth, daisy crowns made with too much wire. Today she doesn't speak, just hands you a single white bloom and mutters, for what you lost. You haven't told anyone. Not about the scroll, not about the whispers, not about the night you woke with dirt under your nails and no memory of how it got there. But somehow they know, or think they do. You go to the tavern. The barkeep, normally sour-faced and stingy, pours you a whiskey without asking. On the house, he says, voice low. You raise an eyebrow. Just figured. You've been working hard lately. It's not a compliment. You glance to your right. A priest is sitting 2 stools down. He nods at you. You don't nod back. You drink in silence. Later outside, you feel the air shift again, like the city is inhaling. You're not alone. You hear footsteps. Slow, deliberate. You turn. The priest. He's following. You stop. Something I can help you with? He stops too. You've been touched, he says simply. By what? He shrugs. Doesn't always have a name. You wait. I don't do exorcisms, he continues, but I can offer bread. You blink. Bread? It helps with dreams. Sometimes. He hands you a loaf wrapped in brown paper. You take it. He turns, walks away without another word. Back in your room, you stare at the bread. It's still warm. It smells of rosemary and ash. You eat half. The dreams come anyway. You're standing in the anatomy theater again. The bleachers are full. But now the students all wear blindfolds, and the surgeon's knife is cutting through your name, etched into bone. You wake sweating. The bread is gone. The paper sits folded beside your pillow. A single word written on it. Soon. You need to clear your head. You take a walk up Arthur's seat. The wind is brutal tonight. It peels the sweat from your skin and tries to peel the skin next. The city lies below, flickering in candlelight and chimney smoke. You sit on a rock. You don't notice the man until he sits beside you. No coat, no hat, just eyes too sharp for a face that calm. You're making people nervous, he says. You nod. So I've heard. You wanted to stop? You look at him. Who are you? No one. Always a good sign. He continues. There's a woman buried behind the cathedral. 4 nights past. Name was Isabel Trent. Died with something she wasn't supposed to have. What kind of something? He doesn't answer, just stands. Bring it to me. I'll make the dream stop. He hands you a small wrapped bundle. Inside is a candle made of something too waxy to be wax, and a string of dried rosemary. Light this when you dig, he says, and don't look her in the eyes. You pocket both. He's already walking away. You don't ask how he knows you'll go, because you already know you will, not for the money, not even for the curiosity, but because they're watching, all of them. The butcher, the flower girl, the barkeep, the priest, and now the man without a name. They're watching to see what you'll bring back next. You tell yourself it's just another job, another patch of dirt, another name on a stone, another body that someone will pay to see unburied and misunderstood. But when you step into the graveyard behind the cathedral, you know this isn't routine. The place feels tilted somehow, like the earth itself is leaning away from the church. The air is wrong too, still and heavy, thick with the scent of candle soot and something cloyingly sweet beneath it. You try not to breathe too deep. You find the grave. It's newer than most, but the headstone is already stained, like the rain refused to wash it. Isabel Trent, it reads, followed by a line so faint it's nearly vanished. She heard what was not meant to be heard. You pause. That wasn't in the briefing. You light the strange candle from the wrapped bundle. It flares to life with a hiss, not so much burning as glowing, like something inside it is awake and stretching. You place it on the stone, heart thumping. You dig. The soil is soft but damp. It clings to your boots and your thoughts. You count every shovel stroke aloud, just to fill the silence. By the time you reach the coffin, your arms ache. Your breath is short, and the candle has burned half its height without melting. You pry the lid. There she is, Isabel Trent. Hands crossed, face calm, hair fanned out like she drowned in velvet. And around her neck, a necklace, twisted metal, dark as coal, with a single white stone in the center. The thing you came for. You reach for it. Her eyes open, just like that. Not wide, not gasping, just open. Soft, steady, watching. You freeze. The candle sputters. You remember what the man said. Don't look her in the eyes. But it's too late. They're gray. Not blank, not empty. Full. Like looking into water that remembers every stone thrown into it. Her lips don't move, but your name, your real name, echoes in your mind like it's been hiding in the roots of this grave, waiting for the right moment to crawl out. You snatch the necklace and stumble back. The candle flares. She closes her eyes again. You slam the coffin shut and climb out of that hole like it's on fire. You don't rebury her. You don't look back. You walk fast, then run, dirt flying from your boots. The necklace burns cold in your palm, like it's trying to burrow into your hand. By the time you get home, you're shaking. You lock the door. You throw the necklace into the fireplace. It doesn't burn, just sits there, stone pulsing, like a heartbeat. You leave it and pace the room. At midnight, the knock comes. One knock, then two, then silence. You open the door. It's the man from Arthur's seat. He walks in without invitation. He picks up the necklace. It saw you, he says. That'll cost extra. You don't ask what he means. You just nod. Sit. He places the necklace into a small box lined with something that looks like sand, but shimmers like glass. She was a listener, he says. Some say she heard voices from the earth. Others say she heard the ones beneath it. You don't want to know. He leaves. You don't sleep that night. You try, but the dreams keep twisting. Visions of graves opening by themselves, of eyes that never blink, of mouths that speak with no breath. You wake to find the candle still glowing. Just a nub now. You toss it into the bin. It lands with a hiss, then silence. But later, in the dark, you hear footsteps pacing above your ceiling. There is no floor above you, and you realize you didn't just take the necklace. You brought something else back with it. It starts small, a shadow where there shouldn't be one, a voice whispering your name, but only when your eyes are closed. The weight of the necklace is long gone, but something heavier has taken its place, settled in your chest like wet wool, and waiting, always waiting. You stop taking jobs, not because your hands won't work, but because the earth won't let you in. Every grave you approach now resists you. Shovels bend, soil won't yield. The ground itself pulses with a warning like an animal baring its teeth. And the candle? It came back. You tossed it. You watched it fall. But the next morning, it sat neatly on your table, wick unburned, just watching you. You don't touch it. Agnes comes knocking 3 days later. Not for a favor, not for coin. She's pale, her eyes sharp, her knuckles scraped raw. I told you, she hisses, pushing past you. I told you that thing wasn't right. You barely speak now, but she doesn't wait for you to. I smelled rosemary outside my window last night, she says. Rotten rosemary. You know what that means? You don't, or you do, but you want to hear someone else say it. Something's walking, wearing the wrong skin. You stare. She throws something onto your table. A sack of salt, a bundle of twine, a small mirror already cracked. Bury that candle, deep, in running water, and don't ever look back. You want to ask if it will work. She answers anyway. It won't stop everything, but it'll give you time. She's gone before you can thank her, or stop her, or warn her. That night, you leave the city. You follow the river south, the candle wrapped tight in cloth that refuses to stay folded. You find a bend in the stream where the water rushes, like it's trying to forget everything upstream. You dig with your hands. You bury the candle. You walk away. You don't look back. But something follows you anyway. Historians still argue whether resurrectionists went mad from guilt, the weight of their work, or something darker, something pulled from the earth that never wanted to be touched. You've stopped arguing. You know now. Back in town, people start seeing things. A figure at their door with no face, boot prints in places no one walks, a whisper that slips under floorboards and says things only the dead should know. They blame you. They're right. The man from Arthur's seat is gone. No one remembers him, or claims not to. The anatomy school locks its back door permanently. They stop accepting unofficial deliveries. You're not banned, just forgotten, erased. One night, you wake to find a child's drawing on your windowsill, scrawled in charcoal, with wide, frantic lines. A stick figure, shovel in hand, standing over a coffin. And beside it, another figure, tall, thin, eyes too large, no feet. You burn it. The ashes float away like dandelion fluff. And you can't tell if that makes you feel better or worse. You start digging again, not for profit, for protection. You line your room with salt, hang mirrors, sleep in short shifts. You don't eat much anymore. Food tastes like dirt, but you dig every night, deeper, further from the city, away from names, away from bones, until one night you don't come back. Your room is still. The candle is gone. The mirror lies face down, and in the corner, a patch of dirt, freshly turned. No shovel, no footprints, just 5 small stones, stacked neatly. Weeks pass, then months. No one sees you again. No one really asks, either. Those who know what you were never expected you to last this long anyway. The taverns whisper. The gravediggers nod in grim recognition. Some say you skipped town. Others say you were swallowed whole by a pit of your own making. One old woman insists she saw you climbing into a hearse, grinning like you'd finally gotten a ride home. None of it matters, because the story doesn't end with you, it just drifts, like fog curling around the ankles of Edinburgh, too thin to hold but too thick to ignore. The anatomy school changes policy. No more unclaimed deliveries. Too many rumors. Too many odd occurrences. One assistant went mad after unwrapping a parcel that reportedly whispered, "Thank you." The church bells ring off key now, just slightly. The flower girl vanished. The priest leaves bread on a windowsill that no longer belongs to anyone. No one touches it. Birds won't even come close. And in the back room of a tiny apothecary, behind bottles labeled in Latin and dust, there sits a box. Inside it, the necklace. The white stone at its center pulses faintly, almost like breathing. No one opens it. No one dares. But late at night, when the wind is just right, the lid creaks. And across town, graves shift, one at a time, subtle, patient, like something underground is slowly rolling over, remembering what it was before it slept. Some say the city is cursed now, others say it always was. But deep in the underbelly of the old kirkyards, among bones broken and sold, there's a space no one digs anymore. It's not marked on any map. No stone, no name. But if you stand there long enough, you'll hear something. Not a voice. Not quite. Just the soft, rhythmic scrape of a shovel. Still digging. Still deeper. Still you. And now maybe you're still lying there, just under the surface. Maybe the shovel never stopped. Not really. Just slowed. Just softened. The dirt pressing down becomes familiar. The roots curl around you like old blankets, and the cold doesn't bite anymore. It just hums, low and steady, like a lullaby no one meant to sing. Above you, the city quiets. The pubs close, the fires dim, the wind tiptoes across the cobbles and forgets to howl. And all the people who walked by your door, who bought your bones and sold your silence, well, they sleep now too. Not from guilt, but because the night is long and stories like yours make them drowsy, safe somehow, in their beds. They don't dream of you, but you dream of them, one at a time, softly. Their names written on toe tags, whispered by fog, spelled out in the folds of grave clothes. And in the quietest hours, when even the ghosts are too tired to knock, you can rest too. The shovel's quiet now. The dirt has settled. The city has exhaled. So go ahead, close your eyes. Let the candle burn low. Let the footsteps fade. The dead are good company once you stop asking questions. And you did your best. You really did. Sleep easy, Resurrectionist. Sleep deep. Sleep long. End of script. Sweet dreams.